Hey everyone, I hope you all are having a fantastic day today. And as most of you probably know, Oppenheimer came out this past weekend, and it's the most recent movie by one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, who is, of course, the one, the only, Christopher Nolan. So today I thought it was fitting to rank all 12 of his movies. Now I want to get something clear, and that's that I don't think that he's a bad film. There are just some of his that I have more issues with than others. And with that out of the way, coming in at number 12 is going to be Following, which is his first film and is Chris's only movie that came out in the 20th century. It was made by just him and some buddies and they filmed on Saturdays because they were all working full-time jobs. The result was a little 100-minute movie in black and white 16mm film stock. It's about a young writer who follows strangers for material and meets a thief who takes him under his wing. This movie is super cool because you can see the director's touch in here and see some ideas he played around with that he would further develop in other movies as his career went on. That being said, I think this movie could be made by a completely different person and be just as good, which is something I rarely say in his filmography. The story itself is not very particular to Nolan, but it does work and the result is a solid B-tier movie. But coming in at number 11 is going to be The Dark Knight Rises. This is the third installment of the Dark Knight trilogy. Now, let me be clear, this movie has some incredible sequences in it. Some of its highs are even to the level of its predecessor. However, I think the story is a little bit confusing, and Batman is not Batman for like 80% of this movie. And just to be clear, generally I like my Batman movies with Batman in them. The movie is also pretty long, and while that often isn't a problem for Nolan's work, this one is. It does feel a little bit dragged out towards the end of it. Also, I know some people tease about Tom Hardy's Bane in this movie because of his voice, but I would put it in the category, it's so goofy that it's good. This movie is frustrating because I want to love it more than I actually ever do. Still not bad though, just the worst of the Dark Knight trilogy for sure. And at number 10 is going to be Insomnia. This movie is often one of Christopher's most forgotten movies, and it kind of makes sense. Out of everything that he has directed, this is the movie where he had the least amount of influence. This was his first big-budget studio film, and he had yet to build up the trust of studio companies that he has today. In all of his other films, he is heavily involved in writing and screenplay as well as directing. In this film, he only directed and did a little bit of uncredited writing. And you can definitely tell that while watching. It lacks that distinct Nolan flair and taste that he's so famous for. Don't get me wrong, this movie is pretty good and it has some deep themes like philosophy and morals behind murder and how one reacts to it. I do wish, however, that the idea of insomnia was explored more in this. It's more of a background context that affects the main character rather than a big idea introduced. This is a murder mystery, but the mystery gets solved fairly quickly, and then it kicks into a new conflict. You, of course, get good performances from Al Pacino, Robin Williams, and Hilary Swank. Good movie, just lacks style. Coming in at number 9 is going to be Tenant, the spy thriller with a big twist. Now, this was Nolan's right before COVID movie, and I think the best way to describe it is the epitome of the best and worst of the director's work. The movie has just mind-boggling moments that, while watching it for the first time, is like nothing I've ever seen before on screen. At the same time, it is just the most confusing thing that I've ever seen on screen. The story is a little bit convoluted, and on top of that, you have a heavily complex concept. Movies, like Inception, were able to give us some super heavy-hitting ideas, but explain those ideas as it went along, giving you a sense of mind-bogglement, but provided just enough information to understand and keep moving forward. Tenet is an incredible thing to experience, but at the same time, it is very evidently flawed. Number 8 is going to be Interstellar. This is a movie that's tricky to rank because it has some sequences that are amazing and absolutely S-tier Nolan, but at the same time, it takes a long time to get to those sequences. Every time I rewatch this, I just want to skip through all of the Earth stuff and just go into space. You do have some good performances, especially from Matthew McConaughey, but I don't think this movie excels on its characters. Highlight sequences from this movie include, of course, the emotional crying scene, which just hurts your heart every single time. Also, the docking sequence. It just has so much tension behind it because the fate of humanity depends on just basically connecting two puzzle pieces. And I know the end the end scene is controversial with how the other dimension works and with the watch hands. I myself don't mind, but I do find it a little bit difficult to buy into. Great film with great moments, just has some plot holes and drags at times. And at number 7 is going to be the newest of the bunch, Oppenheimer. If you've been tracking with the box office lately, it's like insane. I mean, this whole Barbenheimer phenomenon is like nothing the theaters have ever seen before. The amount of money that this movie has made is pretty crazy considering it's a 3-hour biopic, with 99% of the movie consisting of guys in suits talking in rooms. However, Nolan and the incredible team he has with him were able to shoot and edit the scenes to just move at a good pace and build intrigue and tension while giving us a lot of information. I don't care if the film is essentially a really long adaptation to a Wikipedia page, it's pretty darn good. You have possibly Nolan's best cast ever, consisting of almost 24 well-established actors and actresses with very good performances. However, except for Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr., they all get little snippets of screen time. It was fun to point out while watching, "Hey, it's Roderick from Die of a Wimpy Kid," or "What? It's Josh from Drake and Josh," but it did distract me a little bit from the story. Additionally, what they do with Albert Einstein's character and his scenes with Oppenheimer are really well crafted, and no spoilers, but they flow well with the story from beginning to end. And the bomb scene and what they do in that speech that Oppenheimer gives afterwards are clear standouts. My personal favorite part of this film was the sound design. There is almost always loud, thrilling music going on, but when there isn't, it matters. Overall, a very well done documentary-style movie. Swooping in at number 6 is Batman Begins. The first of Chris's 3 Batman films is the greatest example of a safe superhero movie. The movie shines most before Bruce takes on the mask, and the first hour of this is arguably the best hour in the trilogy. But the film loses a little steam after Batman goes after Falcone because all of the momentum was built up to that point, and after that, it has to reshuffle a little bit. I gotta say though, Liam Neeson plays a fantastic villain as Ra's al Ghul. The concept of the hero being trained by his future oppressors I think is just really interesting and was never explored in a superhero film until this one. Scarecrow is fine in this. I'm not crazy about him, but he's needed for a final threat. The complete package by the end is a good movie, but with the best of it up first. Numero 5 is Dunkirk. This was Nolan's first film based off of a true story, and it is technically brilliant, but very frightening and intense. The cinematography and sound in this picture just flows so well, and it is beautifully gruesome. The film is designed for you to be on the edge of your seat the whole time, and Nolan got this from the infamous Eternal music beat. I'm not kidding, go look it up. Additionally, I have heard people complain about the characters being super shallow, and that we don't learn much about them, but I disagree with that crowd because the movie is not something based on characters, but on the event. The characters are used as a tool, a vehicle if you will, to convey the heroism, the tragedy, and the realism of this time period from the Second World War. Nolan also plays around with time in this movie like he does in almost all of his work, but it's just in how the movie is edited, and it is a cool but not a very complex technique. No one has this in their top 3 Nolan films, but Dunkirk is a masterpiece in its own great way. Number 4 is going to be The Prestige. Upon first watch, this is a neat movie that gets you invested in its world. But the more you hear about the production and all the metaphors and genius behind the scenes in here, you quickly see the even more layers to this one. You get great performances in here. Christian Bale, of course, is great as always. And this was kind of early on in Hugh Jackman's rise to the A-list, but he's always had this acting talent since he was young. The twist is very good in this film too. It's one of those things that makes you want to rewatch it again. The only thing I dislike about this movie is that both of the main characters are very unlikable and make poor decisions, so you can't really root for either one, but you are just interested to see how things will play out. Overall though, a very dark but genius movie. Number 3 is going to be Nolan's second film, Memento. And when I say I love this movie, I wish there was a better word for love because this one is so good. There is nothing quite like it. This is absolutely Nolan's most unique film, and while I think he has made 2 better movies, this one is my personal favorite. The premise is a guy who loses all of his memory of past experiences every couple of minutes, but just remembers his name and a few other basic things like where he lives and what car he drives. He tries to track down the murderer of his wife. The point of the film is to put the audience in perspective of the main character with how much information you know, and the movie does that by crisscrossing scenes of the past in reverse, then scenes of the present moving forward, and then scenes in the far past every now and then. Sound confusing? It can be, but it gives you just enough information to understand and keep going forward. And backward. It's rated R mostly for language, but if you or your parents are fine with some F words, you should go watch this as soon as you can. I cannot recommend this enough. Number 2 on this list is going to be The Dark Knight. And to be honest, I keep going back and forth between the number 1 and number 2 on this list, but for this given day, this is where it stands. If you somehow have not heard about this movie, it's the middle one in the Dark Knight trilogy, and it stars possibly the best supporting character in any movie, Heath Ledger's Joker. This film displays an exceptional depiction of moral ambiguity, as well as themes of rules and order, duty, justice and judgment, and identity. Everything about this movie is near perfection. The marketing, the villains, the score, the performances, and the themes. It is a dark film, but that is what you come to expect with Batman. And Heath Ledger deserved every single one of the awards he received. He proved to the world that he wasn't just some pretty face who starred in romantic films and A Knight's Tale. He could really act. The only thing holding the movie back for me is it does feel a little bit long in the middle act while I'm watching. Standout sequences in here are the interrogation and 2 boat scenes. This is undoubtedly the best superhero film ever made. And on that note, we have our numero uno spot on this list, 2010's Inception. Watching this movie is like living in a dream. I certainly don't mind that. You can't sleep on this one. Jokes aside, Inception takes a very intriguing concept about consciousness and dreaming, and it explores it in a 2.5-hour-long action-adventure sci-fi thriller. It was inspired by Nolan's interest for lucid dreaming when he was in school. Sure, there are some plot holes in here, and sure, the characters besides Cobb aren't really given any development or backstory, but you do not care about that when you are watching dreams within dreams within dreams with Hans Zimmer absolutely blaring at your ears. This isn't just a movie, it's an experience. And afterward, you want to just solve all the world's philosophical problems while it's living in a world made by your own mind. So that is why it comes in at number 1. And with that, I'm going to wrap things up. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and please comment down below what video you would like to see in the future. And also, hashtag not sponsored, but I've been listening to on Audible this book called The Nolan Variations, and it's basically a guy who interviewed Nolan the past few years, and so Nolan is talking about all the behind the scenes of what happened with all the movies that he directed. Very, very interesting stuff, what they go in, what the themes they go in, the inspirations Nolan has taken account of, and then also just how these movies, these amazing movies that we all love, were made. So yeah, I highly encourage, I recommend you check that out if you enjoy his movies. But yeah, that's all I got for now. And yeah, I'll see y'all later. Peace out.